vision, one identity, and one community. But we do not need one currency. We strongly believe that having single currency in ASEAN will not do us any good. Even though in today's debate there are 3 points Team Proposition tries to convince us about on how first, single currency in ASEAN provides better response to crisis. Second, single currency in ASEAN maximizes trading. And third, single currency in ASEAN increases the amount of investment. But at the end of my speech, will prove to you that none of their point will stand. Moving on to the first point Team Proposition tried to argue about, on how they believe that ASEAN single currency will provide a better response to crisis. But firstly, they have to prove to us how often and how significant in crisis is happening in ASEAN nowadays, because we believe that big and crisis most likely will not happen in ASEAN. Why? Because ASEAN countries invest in non-risky investments. They don't invest in high-risk investments such as what the United States and United Kingdom does, ladies and gentlemen. ASEAN last crisis is in 1997, and by then ASEAN has been quite prudent. We believe that we do not want to risk this prudence by gambling with one single currency. Ladies and gentlemen, even if crisis happens, we believe that ASEAN are the kind of countries that will recover very quickly. Why? Because we believe that the cheap price of labor, ASEAN supplies that is flexible, and the demand of raw materials from ASEAN countries that it always be demanded and needed by people from all over the world will make it easier for ASEAN to uplift themselves from crisis itself. Even in worst case scenario, if they get in crisis and they cannot uplift themselves from it, we believe that there are still other ways, such as ASEAN Development Bank, bailouts, and countries' direct help, which prove to you that the benefit is not exclusive at all. We do not have to risk the stability of ASEAN just for the so-called way out of crisis that is not even exclusive and demanded in the status quo at all, that can be gotten through other safer ways anyway. It's still on this point, they try to submit to us that ASEAN single currency provides a better response to crisis, because if any crisis happens, when one country goes down, that other ASEAN countries will be incentivized to help each other. Ladies and gentlemen, single currency means having the same level of economic development, that every decision made will impact to each and every ASEAN members, assuming that any country will face any kind of problem. We believe that these other countries that does not face that kind of problem will have a worse economy in the end due to the single fiscal policies. Other countries will be dragged down as well because the damage is spread throughout Asia, making it impossible for them to help each other. While, ladies and gentlemen, if we stick to status quo, where every country can make their own decision and develop in their own ways, the moment other ASEAN countries faces any sort of problem, other countries will have the incentive. Why? Because firstly, they are located close to each other. They want to maintain a good relationship for the future. And most importantly, because they do not get any effect financially, because they still have the resource to do so, because they will have the financial capability to help, ladies and gentlemen. And because there is no urgency at this point, because ASEAN rarely faces crisis, and even if they do, they recover easily. And even if they don't recover easily, we believe there are still other safer ways. We do not need to risk the economic stability and development. Therefore, the first argument brought by Team Proposition has failed to stand. Moving on to the second argument, which they believe that single currency will maximize trading because there is a transaction of cost reduction, but we believe they have to prove to us how significant exactly is the cost reduction itself, because we believe that we do not need any more cost minimization. Why? Because there are already support for trade policies. For example, the import and export tariff cuts. There are already cargo or transport costs that is cheap due to the competition in this field and the location of ASEAN countries that is relatively near to each other. And due to the competition inside the trade itself, the product itself is already relatively cheap to each other. Second of all, we also see that in order for this trade to be effectively and efficiently happening, single currency is not needed. For example, there's already successful bilateral trade agreements such as WTO, NAFTA, and EU-China trade that prove to you that you do not need single currency to do successful trading. Third of all, we do believe that the cost of converting is not at all significant due to the currency that is inside the ASEAN countries that is not that different to begin with. Therefore, their argument have failed to stand. But the cost is not that is not significant to the loss that will be gained if we apply this policy, ladies and gentlemen, because we've proven to you that having single currency means that's one single monetary fund. There will be an efficiency of making monetary policies, which actually has to be different because every single country in ASEAN has different level of development and economic needs, causing no effective and no applicable monetary policy that will be implemented. What is this going to lead us to? Not developing. We believe that this is not what ASEAN wants for its member, thus their second argument has also failed to stand. Moving on to the third point Team Opposition tried to make. They believe that single currency attracts more investors because there is such thing as togetherness in single currency. But we do not believe that single currency actually attracts more investments. Why, ladies and gentlemen? We need to analyze that ASEAN countries are the main producers of raw materials and agriculture products. ASEAN has the basic needs such as crude palm oil, agriculture, and foreign direct investments in ASEAN. We see that having single currency will not increase the amount of investors from investors. Why? Because we believe that the basic needs and the necessities are already invested, reflected to exactly the demand needed by the people out there. Once we've reached this point where the people from all over the world is dependent to the produce of ASEAN, we do not want to gamble. What we mean is that, in the other hand, converting all ASEAN currency into single currency will only decrease the intention of investors to invest. Why? We need to remember last time there's a EU crisis. Last time there's a unification of currency happens. Last time investors invest in something like this, crisis happened, causing hundreds of billions of dollars in the investors' money. It disappears into thin air. We believe that this causes trauma and irrational fear coming from these investors, ladies and gentlemen. That is why they will take a prevention step to actually take down the investments in ASEAN single currency, because they fear that any crisis will happen, even if it's an irrational fear, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore, we do not want this to happen, because we believe that single currency in ASEAN does not provide better response to crisis, that single currency in ASEAN does not maximize trading, and single currency in ASEAN does not create an increase of investment, thus it harms the economy and stability of ASEAN. Please, for the sake of ASEAN, drop this motion.